What's going on, guys? Vulcan here, and today we're back to Outriders with some exclusive info. So recently, the Outriders ambassadors got to virtually sit down with a few of the developers to ask some of the burning questions that we had. It lasted a little over an hour. We got some great info, covered a lot of really good topics, and I'm going to go over those for you guys, and maybe it'll answer some questions that you guys have. So let's go ahead and let's get to it. So first up, we have a question about the game length. How long is Outriders? They told us that it's hard to put a number on game length since you have the main campaign and your optional side quests. Then you also have world tiers, so those are going to work like difficulty levels. Those are either going to slow or speed up your progression depending on your player skill, so those are going to affect your gameplay as well. They firmly believe that there's going to be enough content for players. Now I'm really hoping this is true because it always seems like players are underestimated in how quickly we can burn through content. Now, the other nice thing here is that if you want to blast through the game, you can focus 100% on the main campaign. And once you're done, you can come back to work on side quests. They won't become irrelevant, and they're going to continue to drop gear for your level. And for those people that play solo, you're going to be able to play the full game and end game content by yourself with no restraints. However, they did say you will need a very good build and some strong skills in order to beat the end game content by yourself, because it is designed for groups of 3 players and they're keeping that in mind as they go through things. So this is what 3 players will need to do. This is this thing that they'll need to do. There are no hard limits on group requirements, so for those of you who really like a challenge, crank that world tier up. You can dive in, play some solo end game content. And honestly, that's something I really like to watch, is a solo player going through and just wiping things out. There was this one particular player in World of Warcraft that would always solo raids, and sometimes it would be relatively newer raids or raid experiences, and he would blast through it. It was, one, it was a broken class, but 2, it was just really cool to see how he maximized the effectiveness of his toolkit. So next up is the future of the game, and this is a big question. I know it was a big question for me, but what comes after launch? Now, Outriders is a complete package, meaning they're not offering a season pass, there's no extra DLC, there's no expansions, there's nothing like that that's going to be coming after the game gets into our hands. They're waiting to see how Outriders kind of reviews and whether people want more content. If it does well and people are like, hey, what's next? What's on the horizon? Then they'll develop more for it. They want to add some seasonal stuff maybe to help kind of keep the game fresh. But they did prepare the game to support future content just in case. They figured, hey, while we're here, we might as well set the things up. So if we want to build on it, we can. If not, great. It's still a complete product that people can play over and over and over again. So I really like this approach. I mean, you don't see too many games these days have a full experience out of the box, right? Most things are like, hey, here's the game. Also, we have 3 DLCs that are coming afterwards. We have a season pass that's going to be adding all of this extra stuff. We have this whole kind of battle pass approach. We have all of these different things that are going to promise more content post-launch. But the problem is you typically see a game that's smaller than it could have been because they're trying to keep players in the game, keep players in that world, because more often than not, there is some sort of microtransactions attached to the game. And that's a big thing with Outriders. There is no microtransactions. People Can Fly are very, very, very much against a microtransaction system, cash shops, things like that. So you do not have to worry about that being added to the game. So this is really just kind of an old school launch. I mean, here's the game. You paid us for it. Awesome. Here's a product. We're delivering it. Now, whether or not it's good, we'll have to wait and see. But for now, I'm really liking the way things are shaping up. So there were a couple things we touched on quickly. There wasn't a ton of information here, but this is important information. One, we will have cross-save between like-for-like platforms, meaning if you're on PlayStation, you can play that same character between PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, but there is not cross-save between platforms like PC to Xbox. This is something they're working on. They do want to implement it, but it will probably come after launch, so don't expect that day one. We will also have 6 character slots, 1 slot for each class, and then 2 duplicates if we want some extra of the same characters. There's also no loadout system in the game. It was planned, but they decided just to make switching builds as easy as possible without it for now. Now, this is a bummer for me. I mean, I was really hoping we'd see something like this. When I got to play it, it was easy enough to change between things. I mean, switching all your gear and then switching your talent trees, that was fine. But changing with the press of a button is just a completely different experience. It's that quality of life thing that really kind of makes the whole process much more simple. So that's the goal line. Hopefully we can see that at some point in time, but for now, be ready just to kind of switch things around whenever you need to. The next topic is a big one. So this is a looter, right? So a big question we had was inventory. How much space do we have, and do we have a vault? So inventory is going to be limited by equipment piece, like in Destiny. So you're going to need to scrap items if you're running low on character space. However, they did reinforce you have enough slots, so you're not doing loads of inventory management. Anything you want to save permanently or long term, you can put it in your vault. There's a ton of vault space that you can actually use, which is great. And they did experiment a little bit with unlimited space, but people weren't scrapping things, they were hoarding things. It wasn't the gameplay cycle they were looking for. So they decided to go for caps on character inventory and vault space. Now, I think this is the right move, because if you let players just hang on to everything, that's going to lead to other complaints like we need a search bar, we need a way to organize our stuff, we need a filtering system, we need all of these different things that are going to make searching through pages and pages and pages of loot that I don't want to scrap an easier experience. Now, speaking of loot itself, everyone is going to have instanced loot. They tried out shareable drops. It did not work out well. They believe that individual loot is the best for players to create their own build and play the game. I also think this keeps people playing the game, searching for those best in slot items, right? In looters, trading is always a controversial topic. I've never seen just a group of people just clear cut on it. Some players really like it because it allows them to bypass the grind. It allows them to finish out their build and spend more of their time playing what they want to play. On the other hand, people don't like it for those exact same reasons. They really feel like the journey to collect the items and earn your build is the most important part, and trading negates that. So let me know what you guys think. Drop a comment below. Let's talk about trading, whether or not it belongs in games like this. So next up, we talked about end game. Now, the biggest question that I had was, will there be matchmaking? And that was a short and decisive yes. All end game content will have matchmaking, so for those of you who might not have friends that are playing, you can still party up and complete all end game content. They reconfirmed that expeditions are completely new maps, no recycled content. There will be familiar settings to let you know where you are in the world, kind of from a lore perspective, but these will be completely new areas. They're also saving some elements and mechanics for endgame specifically that we didn't see during the main campaign or side quests. They're keeping those a secret for now, but they did want to put that out there that, hey, you're going to see some stuff you haven't seen before. You're going to have to figure different things out in order to complete these expeditions. So that's something I'm really looking forward to. Most of the time you see developers reuse content, right? Like the main campaign's oftentimes like a tutorial for here are all of these different kind of puzzles, mechanics, systems in order to beat bosses and figure things out, and then those get reused in endgame. That way, you know, you understand how things work. Carry this ball here, shoot this thing to unlock this other deal. So all of that stuff is great, but having brand new ones I really like, and I think that's going to keep things a little bit fresh and keep players on their toes. Now, another big question that most of the ambassadors had was around the build meta and the endgame content. And the question was, are you concerned that the timers and expeditions will force players into a certain meta in order to meet those? And the dev stated, we don't have a concern with timers limiting build meta. Builds are a key pillar, a central foundation to the game, so they wanted to make sure that we had lots of space for unique builds and theory crafting. They gave some examples of playtesting where they created a ton of different builds to see how they all worked, very different identities for these builds, and most of the emphasis comes from how the team works together, and if you have a build that coalesces nicely with the other players in your group. But honestly, they said it really comes down to make a build that you like to play and that you're efficient with, and you should be completely fine. Now, with that being said, there's obviously going to be builds that perform just much better than others, which will lead to a meta, whether you like it or not. It might be a soft meta, but either way, a meta will exist for speeding through content. You put these things together, you have these pieces of gear, and you have this skill tree. Congratulations, you'll be able to blow through things. It's just going to be a balancing act, but this is just the way things shake out. So please don't go into this expecting we're going to be in a meta-less environment, and whatever you use will be top tier. Everything's going to be S tier and it's going to be great. That's just not the way things work. So I did want to put that in there. Now, moving into gameplay, we do have some repeat info and clarification. So one, you can build your character towards specific gun classes using the skill trees. And these won't just add raw damage, they'll actually change how the guns perform, how they work. whether it's adding on modifiers, whether it's changing firing types. There's a whole bunch of different things that kind of go into this. So if you're big into a certain gun type, make sure to choose a class that boosts your playstyle, like Technomancers for sniper rifles, for instance. And then also the cover system in Outriders depends completely on your build. You can build a glass cannon that depends on cover entirely, or you can build a character that never touches cover, just a complete juggernaut. Your class choice also affects how much you need cover. So the Devastator, for instance, might not need anything. Just, I have a bunch of defensive skills, I'm a juggernaut, I'm a tank, I'm going to go out there and just soak damage. Where the Technomancer probably is going to need more cover. It's a squishier class. But the big thing with that is you can still deal big damage from cover using their gadgets. It's an indirect damage gameplay. If that's something you really like, then I would say go towards that class. There are certain classes that reward aggressive play, so those ones most likely won't be in cover too much. So really it's all coming down to class decision and build choices. How do you want to play your character? There's a lot of different ways to kind of spec that out. So that wraps up the big points from Q&A. Hopefully there was some new info in there for you guys. I'm excited for the game, and I'm really excited to see what they show off before we hit release. For those of you that don't know, Outriders is launching on Xbox, PlayStation, PC, Switch, and Stadia on February 2nd, 2021, and I cannot wait to hear from you guys. So, as always, this has been Vulcan, and I'll talk to you guys next time.